I don't think it's the most controversial take to say that trauma and loss impacts someone's psyche.
Wow, that looked like it really hurt.
It makes you feel things like fear and anxiety and depression and guilt, and even going so far as to changing your philosophy and how you view life, you know, your perspective on life. These changes can really break a person. They can fill a person up with turmoil and all of this angst until they are forced, and they feel forced to express everything that they are feeling. But this expression isn't linear. It's entirely, in my opinion, dependent on how much control you have over yourself when the pot, I suppose, overflows. And that brings us to the point of today's video. Both Batman and Red Hood have very similar traumas and emotions. Watch my other video where I talk about Jason Todd and Bruce Wayne being very, very similar as people. But what is different between the two of them is the way that they control it. The fact that one of them, Batman, controls it to a T and controls how he expresses his emotions and his traumas, whereas Red Hood, in comparison, doesn't. He lets it loose. He overflows and allows them almost to control him. What do I mean by that? Well, watch this video where I explain 3 reasons why Batman and Red Hood don't get along and why they shouldn't. And just before I get into it, hi, I'm Nausea. I use psychology and humor to discuss fiction, and if you like this video or this channel, I suppose, please engage with it in any which way you can. Like, subscribe, comment afterwards, whatever, so that the YouTube algorithm doesn't toss me aside like a used tampon. Thank you. Now let's get into it. Disclaimer, you could not find a creator who loves Bruce and Jason's father-son relationship more than me on this website. But this video isn't about Bruce and Jason. It's about their vigilante identities. So please keep that in mind. Now, I want to address the most obvious point first, why they don't get along, why their vigilante identities cannot get along. And it's because of how they express themselves through violence. Oxford Dictionary defines violence to be a behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. And the second definition, interestingly enough, is very relevant to this video. It says that violence is strength of emotion or of a destructive natural force. It's brutality, it's intensity, it's a force, it's supposed to hurt, and it's a tool to inflict pain. But while Batman controls it, Red Hood is controlled by it. Batman is always shown to be thinking about how much force he's using, how much violence he's using, and for what means, to what end. He tries to think about his children as well while doing this. You know, am I beating up this mugger to get something from them? Why am I doing this? How much violence is too much for the police to really stop working with me? When I'm with Jim, when Jim is stopping me from committing these sins and these acts of violence, I should stop fighting. I should listen to him when he tells me to stop. When someone else tells me to stop, I need to interrogate people. I need to scare people. I need to beat people up. I need to defend myself. You know, all of the times he uses violence, he fights, he thinks about fighting, he's thinking about fighting while fighting. It's always with a martial artist mindset. It's always with the idea of using your body as a tool, you know, using your brutality as a tool for the greater good. You know, it's acknowledging that I don't know whether I'm a good person, so I'll make sure that I don't go too far. He's like, I'll make sure that I will only do as much violence as I can conceivably imagine a good person would do. It's a very controlled way of thinking. But Red Hood is different. He uses violence in an entirely different way with entirely different thought processes a lot of the time. He's not just using violence as a tool to help with the case, even though that's really good and very helpful, and he does do that, but that's not what he's mostly doing. He's mostly using it as a tool for the victim, you know, to really deal out justice, for really deal out vengeance. You know, he sees violence as a way to do right by the victim, to make it so that the victim feels comforted by his acts, to make it so that the victim doesn't suffer again from the person who has harmed them. And so he will kill people, he will go further than Bruce ever will, because he's not considering about, you know, other people and the police and his public perception. He's not calculating how much should I do this to execute that, how much should I do that to execute that, especially when he's on the streets. This is not to say he never does. He does it all the time. You know, when he's solving cases, he's always thinking about, I can't scare them too much. But Jason often goes further than he needs to, and he knows that, he acknowledges that, because he's not even just getting justice for the victim, he's also getting it for himself. You know, he has a victim mentality where he's not necessarily even just upset with the perpetrator, but with the situation, and he feels like the only way to stop this situation from happening and to protect the victim is to get rid of the perpetrator. Jason doesn't care, you know, about correcting the system, because he is a bit of a nihilist. He doesn't think anything can be changed fundamentally. He thinks the world is going to stay the same. And so in the case that the world stays the same, in the case that the system doesn't matter, the cops don't matter, public perception doesn't matter too much unless it's maybe the victims themselves, he wants the victims to see justice. He wants them to get revenge. He wants them to feel safe in a world that will never be completely safe. He wants to actually make an impact in a way that is direct and in a way that services him as well. The whole thing with Bruce and Joker and Jason and wanting him to kill him is quite a different scenario. I would say that that's definitely because Jason is the victim in that case, and so he's more so upset with Bruce for failing him, because Bruce is the one he cares about, not necessarily the Joker and all of that, especially because he kind of seems to have overcame his fear of the Joker. He doesn't so much feel like killing the Joker would actually be justice for him or make him feel happy. He feels like what happened and what actually is upsetting and what actually he's still holding on to is the abandonment issues that he feels, and the abandonment he felt by not being saved, and from the fact that Bruce didn't deal out the justice like he would have done for a victim, you know. And so it's a very complicated emotional thing when it's Jason being the victim, but most of the time, as he's not the direct victim, he doesn't have those complicated feelings. He sees it as a straight, this is the perpetrator and this is the angst that they're feeling. He doesn't know the details of what's going on, but it's very clear, you know, in the situation where you're getting mugged, it's unlikely that you're going to start having these complicated emotions about, oh, I was abandoned, and oh, this and that is the problem. You know, most of the time that's the problem, that's the person who assaulted me. And so in that case, Jason's like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of that problem. But I'm sure if it was another person, I think there's been a case where like there was a complicated, was it Blue Hood or something, there was a complicated issue where there was an abusive parent, but the initial problem wasn't that. And so Jason really investigated everything that was going on, and like you see how Jason really does care about what bothered the victim, and it just so happens that most of the time what bothered the victim is very, very clear and very surface level. He gets rid of that, but in that case he actually followed the victim and he dealt with the problem that was below the surface. So it just really does emphasize that Jason cares about the victim, and his violence is put in the victim's hand as a tool to get justice for them. So it's way different to how Bruce treats violence. Way different. That's why while both are equally feared, Red Hood is seen as a villain, whereas Batman is seen as a hero in the public eye, is what I mean, because only the victims really see the care that Red Hood has, whereas Batman focuses on making sure that he never goes too far for the victim's sake or for his own sake or for anyone's sake, and that he weighs everyone equally. This is why they can't get along in public, you know, on a surface level. Fundamentally, their symbols are different. I don't mean literally, because I mean literally their symbols are the same or very similar, okay? Like, shut up. I mean, like, their ethos, their way of doing things are different, and the way that they use violence especially is different. But violence isn't all that makes Batman Batman and Red Hood Red Hood. There's much more to that, and weirdly enough they clash on these other factors too. In fact, you could say they're like different clans because they clash so much. Just because Batman and Red Hood came from similar traumas, have similar circumstances from when they were young, their ideas and their ideologies are completely different. Catelli and Brandit in 2025 wrote a psychology paper comparing the similarities and differences of right-wing people and left-wing people. Regardless of where you fall, they state that although there are some key differences between them, so personality, values, and perhaps most importantly, in the groups and the causes that they prioritize, people across the ideological divide are much more similar than scholars sometimes appreciate. Which backs on my point of although both of them started from such similar backgrounds, they actually can vary drastically in where their personas fall on the spectrum. Hey, it's editing a nausea. I'm going to be saying right and left a lot, but what I actually mean by right is conservative authoritarianism, and what I mean by left is liberal anti-authoritarianism. Please bear that in mind. Just like with violence, Batman controls his ideology. While Bruce Wayne's ideology clearly is left, I mean, he's trying to rebuild systems, he's trying to put money into systems and help people and develop things for the greater good, or for sharing wealth and sharing knowledge and sharing a lot of things. His methods are pretty right. They're pretty much focused on giving money and beefing up the pockets of people who already have it. It's focused on making systems or developing systems already in place, not changing anything that's already in place. So Bruce Wayne really, even though his persona, Brucey Wayne, he clearly cares and he is left, I suppose, in that sense. His methods are right, but Batman is not at all the same. And that's intentional. The figure Batman refuses to rationalize killing to himself. He follows the rules and he tries to keep the systems the same. He works with the cops to keep the systems the same. So his ideology is quite right, I would say. He doesn't want to break the law. He doesn't want to break rules. He wants the world to work how it works without him completely messing it up. But then his methods are incredibly left, and he knows that. That whole confrontation with Jason and Bruce, and it's talking about like Jason's like, I'm not gonna be you, I'm not gonna do what you're doing, and Bruce is like, what about what I'm doing is normal and legal? And they have a little joke about it because Bruce himself knows that his methods are crazy. His methods are not at all legal. His methods are not at all right, I suppose, or trying to retain the system. But he thinks that way, as Batman at least, that the system needs to stay, that they can work around the system, because he's worried that he will go too far if he doesn't have that system in place. So yeah, like I said, Bruce Wayne very clearly and very precisely controls how he does things and the way he thinks for different personas. As Bruce Wayne, he's a left guy, but he uses right methods. As Batman, he's a right guy who uses left methods. At least this is my interpretation of his character. And like with violence, Jason is nothing like that. He is not someone to control his ideologies and methods to the ends of the earth. Jason doesn't care about that. Jason wants justice. And so Jason is left through and through. He is chaotic left. I mean, Jesus Christ. Jason Todd and Red Hood are the exact same. Red Hood doesn't create no lines to follow. Red Hood doesn't care about having that kind of level of systems in place. He doesn't want those systems in place. In fact, he's, I would say, a bit anti-authoritarian, a bit anarchist. He wants chaos for the sake of rebuilding, for the sake of focusing on the victims and making it so that the world is not the same as it is. And even though he understands the world and how it works, he wants nothing to do with the systems that are in place. He wants to use the chaos that he can find, the drug dealing and making a whole drug empire, using that chaos to make a better world. And he does it in various different situations, various different conversations. He's expressing, and he does express, this is how he feels. He doesn't want the systems to be like they are because they failed people, they failed the victims, and that's what he cares about more than his own personal rules, his own personal line, and his own control. He doesn't care about all of that. He will just do anything he can to make it so that the world changes, whereas Bruce has a much more complicated viewpoint in different personas and doing different things, which you could argue is better or worse. Batman and Red Hood might have started very similar, might have similar reasons for doing what they're doing, but their ideologies are either carefully constructed and their methods are either carefully done, or they are just simply true to themselves. And that is what makes them clash even more. But there's still something missing. Violence as a tool, ideologies and methods. You'd think we were done with Batman and Red Hood. I mean, what else is there? You know, why don't they get along? It's not just these two factors that we have left to talk about, because if it was, it wouldn't really explain why they have such a complicated relationship. It wouldn't really explain why, as vigilantes, not their people underneath, or not their identities underneath, why they clash so much, but they still haven't persecuted each other yet. They aren't proper enemies, and neither the fans, or most of the fans, or the writers really want them to be complete and proper enemies. So here it is. The last reason they don't get along, the last reason why they clash and why they shouldn't not clash, isn't because Jason said, "You haven't lost your touch, Bruce," and pissed them off in the Under Red Hood movie, but it's love. Now you might be thinking, what the does love have to do with Batman and Red Hood? Well, it's the same issue all over again. Batman and Red Hood clash because of the way that they express their loves, because of the way that they control their love. But we're not going to be talking about how they control their love with other people. We're not going to be talking about how they control their love towards themselves. We're going to be talking about how Bruce controls his love towards Jason and Jason just doesn't, and how that is incompatible too. I know that I have spent the whole video talking about how Red Hood and Batman are separate, but we can't completely see them as separate. There are some overlaps that I have to address that do kind of overlap with their identities below it, and I can't stop that, because Batman controlling his love for Jason is what caused Red Hood to exist in the first place. Batman controls his love towards Red Hood. He wasn't able to kill the Joker. He wasn't able to do what Jason needed at the time, what Jason told him he needed. He wasn't able to let go of the pedestal in his mind and to be the father that he needed to be, because he was too much of Batman. He was too much of thinking about this job as a job to express his love for Jason in the way that Jason would have wanted. He was too much of Batman to put himself over the mission and over his perception, and that's throughout. We can see that throughout. Like I said, you can see that through the violence and how he uses that as a very fine, specific tool that he sharpens himself, and then how he crafts his ideology, how he crafts and uses his opinions and uses his standpoints and crafts his methods very carefully to form Batman. So no matter what love he had for Jason, that also had to be controlled as Red Hood, but also as Robin. And so while he loves what Robin is, in essence, the idea of Robin and what good and hope Robin has brought to the world, he can't fully really get or understand or convey his appreciation for the good that Red Hood does. He can't really trust Red Hood. He can't really feel any affection or show that he feels affection for fear of encouraging Red Hood. And every time in the comics that we see that he is actually appreciative and he likes what Red Hood does, Batman is also then shown something else, or they write him to be disappointed afterwards, or they write it immediately that Jason then, after he saved X people, he killed these people. And so there's never an opportunity really, I feel like, for Batman to be proud of what Red Hood is doing, because he doesn't want to allow him to feel that way, because Red Hood is a ghost. Red Hood is something that has tortured him and has been the bane of his existence. He's a pseudo villain, pseudo anti-hero, pseudo hero, And Batman has no idea how to feel about that or how to convey that and understand that. And so he just kind of either expresses it sometimes if he feels like the situation is right, or he just keeps it inside. And this hyper control of this emotion, this love that Batman also feels for Red Hood occasionally, whether that be because he's a ghost of Robin or because of the fact that he's his own hero, and he does have to confront that sometimes Red Hood just frankly does good work. And because of this stuff, Red Hood clashes with Batman. In comparison, Red Hood doesn't control his emotions towards Batman. It's of course with the lingering underlying of Bruce Wayne and Jason there, but if we're thinking about Red Hood in the costume, he loves and he appreciates Batman as an icon, as a symbol, as an ideal, and he really does have affection for the way that he remembers Batman. He likes who Batman was, maybe even more than he likes who Batman is now, and he expects so much from Batman. He expects that camaraderie, that allyship, that trust in their vigilante identities from Batman, because that's what he got as Robin. But Bruce will not give that to him, and so he's constantly disappointed. He's constantly acting out to get some kind of reaction, and he acts out even more when he doesn't. And this chaos inside of Jason, when he thinks about how he feels about Batman and how Batman feels about him, is often the biggest thing that gets in their way, even more than the violence, even more than the ideologies and the methods. If Batman and Red Hood knew that they respected each other, if they had an understanding at least that they really could just coexist, or that they were both doing good work and they both valued each other's work and that they should work together and all of this stuff, then maybe they wouldn't clash, maybe they would get along, maybe they would be able to be allies again. But they never will, because the way that they express themselves is completely different. And not to mention that the expectations that Jason has for Bruce just could never do, because he has to control how he expresses himself. Batman controls how he expresses himself with all of these factors, and so it never is going to work on either end. Batman is never gonna feel like Red Hood is someone worth trusting, worth showing his love towards, or he should show his love towards, because it's not right. He shouldn't feel this way. He shouldn't be so conflicted. He shouldn't like what Red Hood does. He has been shown constantly that he should never trust Red Hood after everything that happens, and without trust he can't really fully let his guard down and love him. Whereas Red Hood doesn't get that, you know. He's like, what, why are you resisting me? Why are you failing me? Why are you doing all of this stuff? I want you to help me, I want you to do this. And then he just makes a whole stink, and it's like both of them are just completely missing the mark with each other. Neither know where they stand with each other fundamentally, which is why they just can't get along. In conclusion, Batman is very controlling with his violence, his ideology, and his love, and Red Hood is simply not. Jason Todd is not Bruce Wayne's foil because they are so similar, but Red Hood is Batman's foil. Difference, you see? Neither are necessarily better than the other. I hope I haven't given you the feeling like I'm completely skewed on one side, because I'm not. I see merit in both controlling everything and both being completely true to yourself. But these characters don't see that like me. They judge each other for it. And I would be confused, but I had a psychology lecture where they were talking about sexism and how a lot of women tend to be the most sexist towards other women because they see them as victimizing themselves when they also go through the same thing in their brain. So they're like, why can I be okay but you can't? You're just victimizing yourself, you're being a baby. And I'm like, I will strangle you. And they just don't get it. They really don't understand how they can go through something so similar and come out differently in the other end. That's how Bruce and Jason react to the understanding of the controlling, to the understanding of the complete absence of control in response to grief. Hence, they just can't get along. They just can't, and they shouldn't get along, at least professionally. I think we need to pack our bags, guys. I don't see it happening. And that's that. If you want to do one thing, then subscribe. Otherwise, check out my other videos and comment down below what you thought so we can talk about this video a lot. And then I say a quickie goodbye. I just tried to think of a rhyme. Yeah. they shouldn't get along, Batman and Red Hood. I just feel like it doesn't make sense. If we want to make sure that we keep to characters, it's not going to happen. Like, unless if one of them have like a superb, really big character arc that's permanent, then there's no point. Especially because half the time where Jason changes the way he uses violence and changes the way he thinks is always just like so random. Like, oh, Jason's using rubber bullets, and you're looking for the character arc. You're like, where's the 50-issue run where Jason decided he's going to use rubber bullets? You know, where is all that character development gone? But it's not there because they don't care about making it so that the characters actually can get along. They just kind of force it. And so I'm saying that if you want them to get along, their vigilante identities, because I still think Jason and Bruce Wayne unmasked can get along easy peasy lemon squeezy. After obviously some conversations, but you know, if you want their vigilante identity to get along, please DC write actual character arcs that change their fundamental, you know, ideologies and fucking violence and the way they express love as vigilantes, because otherwise it's just not going to work out. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and nobody's going to be convinced by it, and everybody's going to be very confused. So yeah, that's my plea. Hope you like the shirt. I really like it, but it's not necessarily Jason's because it's like still a bat symbol, but like red. So yeah, it's like ambiguous. Like, what is it? Is it like dark red Batman, or is it Red Hood? Like, who's to say? I have a hood, so really, it's a Red Hood thing. I've got a red hood and I've got the, you see, yeah. Okay, bye.